This video is brought to you by Describe. Link in the description for 10% off your first subscription payment.
Hey folks, I'm Sebastian and welcome to Atmoseeker, your place for creating an inspiring atmosphere for your tabletop role-playing games. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at the Insta360 Link. It can pan, tilt, and zoom, and you can wire it all up into the Stream Deck to get some interesting effects like moving to different preset positions and having more finer control for different parts of the board. So let's get to it. So this is the camera right here. It's the Insta360 Link, as I mentioned before, which is more of a high-end webcam designed for kind of web conferencing, your Zoom meetings, that kind of thing. We're not going to do any of that. We're going to use this for tabletop gaming. If you're someone who plays a lot of online Dungeons and Dragons or likes to film your own battle reports, we're going to use it as a dynamic cam to get all kinds of different camera angles on an entire battlefield. Now, this is in contrast to a lot of other kind of techniques for having a battle cam, using some of those like scissor arm things with the webcams and stuff. So this is gonna like speed up any kind of changing camera angles quite dynamically. So it's gonna be super fast at doing that. It's decent quality. It's got a high-ish sensor in there. So it's gonna work pretty well in low lighting as well. You can see it kind of mounted upside down here. Got reasons for that, but I'm going to show you how we're going to set it up with the Stream Deck as well. If you don't have a Stream Deck, you can use other kind of shortcut keys and that kind of stuff, but the Stream Deck is going to be key for getting the most out of it. Before we get into more of the technical setup, you can see here I've got it mounted centrally and high above the 4x3 play space that I've got here, and I've got it mounted upside down. That does cause a couple of things that we kind of have to work around later in the video, but I found that kind of having it mounted upside down in this position means we can get full advantage of that 360 movement of the camera. Meaning that if you have people seated around the table, you can cut to those camera angles, then back to the table, and then back again, even getting close-ups on dice trays and miniatures and stuff. So that's quite cool. So having it mounted upside down if you can. Here, I'm quite fortunate that I have these metal trusses and stuff that I can hand stuff from in the garage. But if you have like a C-stand or even a microphone stand that has kind of one of those extendable arms, having that kind of mounted upside down is quite good. It's quite a light camera, so you don't have to worry about having anything too heavy duty, just enough to kind of keep it steady. So if you do mount it upside down, there is a quick way that you can correct the feed for live streaming and conference calling. So here I'm using a program called OBS to load that camera feed as one of the sources here, and then you can easily just transform, edit, transform, and just rotate it 180 degrees. Now that's going to correct, we can use the virtual camera in here in the settings to be able to make that as a accessible camera source for any of your Zoom or Discord or any other kind of live stream sources as well. Now, before we take a look at more of the advanced setup for this camera, here's a word about today's sponsor, Describe. Now, having the Battlecam is great to capture all the action, but describing all the events can always use some help from some juicy descriptive text. Describe offers thousands of professionally written scenes, places, monsters, and events for fantasy and sci-fi settings. They'll be sure to intensify your next battle report or next D&D game. You can use the code Atmoseeker at checkout to get 10% off your first subscription payment. Let's get back to the show. So the camera actually comes with its own software that has some fun little features in there for like controlling the gimbal, face tracking, also having preset positions that you can control. Although it is only limited to 6 preset positions, you can fire them off with keyboard shortcuts if you don't have a Stream Deck. But if you do have a Stream Deck, there's a few more things that you can do with it to get some fancy control. One of the cool things you can do if you have a Stream Deck, you can basically use it as a camera controller. Here I've got shortcut keys that are targeting the Insta360 Link controller software, and it's firing off shortcut hotkeys with those button presses. Because I've got it mounted upside down, I do have to invert what those hotkeys are, but you can lay it out to a more intuitive layout whilst you're putting it into the Stream Deck. And here on the Stream Deck Plus, you can even use the dial here for some fancy zoom functions in here. The dial is basically firing off hotkeys for left and right for when you turn it. Another cool thing that you can do with the Stream Deck is have preset positions programmed to buttons. Now for this, I'm using the cam controller from Bar Raider. It's a plugin, it's just on the Stream Deck plugin store. And basically I'm using it to have it on these 3 buttons to show the individual values of what the kind of coordinates of the camera are at the moment. So here it's displaying the pan, tilt, and zoom. And we're going to take those values and pop it into a singular button. So this one is using a multi-action, so when that button is pressed, it'll move the camera to those positions. So for instance, if I wanted to have a new preset, I would move the camera to wherever I wanted to have that new camera angle. And then those new values are going to be displayed on these buttons, and I can use that when popping them into the multi-action. So now when I push that button, it'll snap to those new coordinates. You can go back and forth really fast, really easily. That's pretty cool. So for a small camera, the gimbal control offers a lot of flexibility when showing off your terrain, especially when integrating it with the Stream Deck. That's going to get you a lot of those different camera angles quite quickly without the fuss of moving a camera manually. Quality-wise, I found it fairly decent for my own live streams, so you can check those out if you want to see it more in action. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and if you're interested in grabbing one yourself, there's an affiliate link in the description. Now, this channel wouldn't be possible without the support of my fantastic patrons, with a special shout out to Blake Dale, Chase McAllister, Chris Andrus, Chris Johnson, Dr. Justin L. Hamrick, John A. Johnson, Luke Mansberger, and Charisma on Command. Until next time, I'm Sebastian, and let's create and inspire.